This video is sponsored by thingpenguin.com.
All right, it's Monday night at 6 o'clock p.m. New Hampshire free time. We voted on that a long time ago, but now we it hasn't been discussed much. But some of us are talking about which kind of time we should have for New Hampshire. A long time ago, a bunch of us voted for New Hampshire free time because and it would just be Eastern Standard. But I saw a couple people that want us to be on Atlantic time, so I don't know. We'll see. Um, so Riley has joined Mr. Penguin and I.
Yep.
So Riley, I'm going to read some of the stuff of my blog post for this week, like we did last week.
Excellent.
The first thing we were going to talk about is Mr. Penguin, as he's known on this medium. It brought up something. What were you talking about?
Yeah, Dave Ridley was doing some fantastic work with calling radio stations. I'm shocked. He's. I mean, I know he's usually good about calling radio stations about just different stuff that we're doing, but he's been really at it. Like
he has. He's been amazing at getting things done. I am really impressed that he's been able to get on radio stations and talk about New Hampshire independence.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably brought in more publicity that I'm at least that I'm aware of than anybody. Or at least it sounds like it.
Yeah, well, Dave's always been doing that and always been good at that. That seems to be his biggest thing he's doing right now, and he's focusing on NHexit. I know that. Let me look up. He has instructions for other people to help them figure out how to do that, which is a thing on the forum.shiresociety.com.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else is actually doing it though.
Yeah, but if somebody gets the idea, he has all the links.
Yeah. It takes a special kind of person to call radio stations.
Yeah, and he has links.
Yeah, it does.
Where you can actually get on.
Yeah, you gotta have a little courage to call into the radio shows sometimes.
It's funny. It's funny how I never call radio station. I've called a radio station once, and it was Free Talk Live. But it's kind of funny because I've done Free Talk Live I co-host Free Talk Live for 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has it. So the best place is he has it on the Shire Society forum. And if you look up New Hampshire radio shows, so he calls it New Hampshire radio shows, you can call and get on air, and he's got all the links. He's got the times, and he's probably got 40 of them on here. Because like when he wants to talk NHexit, he can do that outside of New Hampshire because he'd want, like last week, he can be on in Delaware and tell people there, hey, if you're sick of stuff, come join us. So there's really no limit to how far he wants to go on that kind of stuff. And then I think he updates these things with the changes, like host changes and stuff like that. So people can find that. It's in the normal general discussion on the Shire forum. He posts a link to it every once in a while too. So I will add that to my my blog post that will come out tonight.
Excellent.
I'll add that just because we're talking about it. You know what I mean? So I'll add that into the thing. This is kind of fun watching a Google document that I'm editing on one screen and it's popping up on another screen. This is kind of fun. Okay. Riley, did you have something before I start reading my first thing?
I don't have anything that I can think of.
Okay, let's see here. So, the first thing I was going to read that's a blog post is that's a future blog post is Leaf Alexander is how he goes by on the Shire forum, and he does nice long posts. Most of them are too long for me to re-put into this thing. But this is a little thing he was talking about. He's saying some stuff that we've been seeing. He says Texit has garnered more than 100,000 signatures to put a referendum on the Republican primary ballot. The ballot will read, as I currently have it, quote, should the state of Texas reassert its status as an independent nation, question mark, end quote. If a majority of Republicans say yes in sufficient numbers in the March primary, it could lead them to put it on the November ballot. Okay, that'll be interesting. There are already 2 planks of the Republican platform that address secession. Oh, that's interesting. In the platform in Texas. Okay. Republican, I think New Hampshire, the only ones that have secession in their party plank is the LP, the Libertarian Party. That's as far as I know. Republicans have the edge in Texas, so if the March vote is overwhelmingly yes, it is unlikely that the Democrats would have enough power to override them in November. So we'll see how that goes. If Texas secedes, they would take their electoral college votes with them. Without those electoral college votes, it would be impossible for the rest of the nation to ever elect a Republican president. I'm going to stop there and see your guys' reactions. We get this a lot when people talk about secession. They're worried, like, if Texas secedes, then a Republican will never, ever win in the United States ever again. What's your guys' reaction to that?
I think that's going to be ridiculous, or it's just fear mongering to scare people into not supporting an idea, because it happens every political election cycle or cycle that comes up. It's just scaremongering.
What I really want to know is why I would care. It's not like the Republicans are better than the Democrats.
Yeah,
The Democrats
why
aren't
should I
better than the
care?
Republicans.
I know that's my reaction. Is just like, acting like this is the most important thing. And if one little thing happens, it'll tip in a direction we'll never, ever stop from. And now we might as well, it's hopeless. Also, if you're thinking that kind of thing, man, you want Texas to secede and go move there or something, that's just like, if you were so worried about it, Okay, so, but I've heard that from a lot of people. Okay, so back to what he's saying. That being the case, it has been suggested that other red states, seeing that they could never get another Republican president, would also attempt secession and perhaps join Texas in some kind of confederation. Have you guys heard that?
I haven't heard it, no.
Yeah, I've seen that around where guys are talking about, well, if Texas was to leave or Florida was to leave, that other southern states might want to go with them. Because, if Texas left, would Arkansas want to be in Texas, in a country with Texas instead of, New York and California? And I could see that happening, Plus, a lot of things would have happened before Texas secedes, right? There'll be a lot of water under the bridge. But have you ever run into that, Mr. Penguin? Yeah, I guess maybe you guys haven't seen that.
I think so. Yeah, I think I have seen that.
I've definitely seen people talking about that. Also on Twitter, my NHexit account on Twitter, I follow and am followed by a lot of Southern secession people. So, I see a lot more of that kind of stuff. Okay, so that says that would include New Hampshire, but the final report of the HB 1130 committee is not due until 2025. So yeah, if HB 1130 passes, that committee would be doing stuff throughout like 2024 or something like that. So yeah, we wouldn't be talking about that, bro. This adds a certain urgency to these proceedings. It might not play out this way, but then again, it might. A recent addition to the states talking about secession is Florida, and if Texas goes, Florida would likely be right behind them. So that's all of what Leaf said. I don't know if Texas goes, Florida, maybe. Also, Florida thinks of itself as so different than Texas in some ways, right? I think that would be. So the last podcast that people will have gotten from NHexit.org would be my one I did a couple days ago with Bear Arms. So we did about a half an hour, so you will have heard that by now. But he left us his his contact info. So his videos are on YouTube under the No Duty to Submit channel. So if you type in No Duty to Submit on YouTube, you will find his videos about in original intent of the Constitution and stuff, and who really needs to pay income taxes and that sort of stuff. He also wanted me to give out his actual email address, which is libertywithoutlicense@gmail.com. That's not, it's all spelled normal. Another thing that I was putting in this thing was, again, Steve Villay did an interview on YouTube with a couple of guys that were kind of socialist in the part that I listened to. But he was talking his Club 75 Alliance. So I'm wanting to put that in there. So Club 75 Alliance. So it's club75alliance.com is his website. He wants people to move here, vote to secede, get the United States government to agree with us. He doesn't like New Hampshire just leaving by itself, but he does like the idea of New Hampshire leaving. And then once New Hampshire's gone, we won't have a national income tax, right?
That'd be cool.
That's his big thing, is he thinks everybody that pays a lot of taxes should move here and turn us into Monaco. So I like that idea. Remember, he debated Alu this summer about whether we should do it unilaterally or not. He doesn't think we should just leave. He thinks we should wait for the U.S. to agree with us. So
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that, but I like all of his other ideas, so I promote him all the time. Okay, so here's somebody. What's funny, this bill I didn't know about because I don't know about very many bills, but there's a bill that the 10th Amendment Center pointed out, and that's how I found out about it. I probably would have found it if I would have read everything from Matt C. from the PAC. But he said, here's a pretty interesting bill in New Hampshire. It's called HB 1156. So this is proposed. The title of it is the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization shall have no jurisdiction in New Hampshire.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, so that's a bill proposed by 10 different guys. One of the people is Matt Sanastaso, our buddy. And he's one of the sponsors. I think you can have 10 sponsors. So that's what they have on there. So the wording on that bill is saying we do not want any state agencies of New Hampshire to obey anything that these two groups do, right? The World Health Organization is inside the UN, and then you got the CDC saying stuff, and they're wanting to. So we'll see. That'll be interesting to be debated and voted on. Then another one I was talking to Riley about offline was the 10th Amendment Center also did a nice video about, will the federal government crush you or not? And what they were discussing is Murray Rothbard's talking history of the Whiskey Rebellion. And it's not so cut and dried as most of us are taught. You know, we're all taught that people didn't want to pay the whiskey tax. The federal government came and smashed them, and that was done with that. And it's not that simple. So that's an interesting one. The video, it's on YouTube, and it's called Don't Try, They'll Crush You. And that's from the 10th Amendment Center. I posted that and other things, and of course that'll be in the blog post. Let's see. Then I have a YouTube video that I'm posting about the vote that's happening in Texas. So that's another one, you know, from the Texas National Movement guys put out videos every day. So there's always lots of stuff to look at from them. They, let's see. Okay. Can you do the math for me, Mr. Penguin?
What do you need?
How many people live in Texas?
I don't know.
We need to figure out how big our movement needs to be. You know how we tried to figure out how big our movement needs to be compared to Brexit, right? How much money we need to spend?
Yeah, sure.
Let me see here. Let me. Can
Texas
you look?
population is 30 million in
So they're
2022.
30 million, and we're only 1.5 million.
Yeah,
So,
no, we're like 1.3, I think. They're about they're almost 30 times larger than us.
yeah. So
Yeah, it's a big state.
So let's say, let me do the math here. So that I think we should have this in our head, because that way we'll just keep track of if we're falling behind Texas or not. So they have 30 million divided by 1.3 million. Yeah, so they're 23 times bigger than us. And then I also have to redo that math on Brexit. Remember how we were figuring out how much money they spent on Brexit, and how, like, if we were proportionally to spend that much money, I think it was like, like $1 million or something like that we need to spend on it, or something like that. We'll have to look that up. So if they do a podcast every day, we need to do a podcast every 23 days. So I think we're on track. Okay.
We are. We're good.
All right, so we're good on that one. We'll just have to figure out we'll have to keep track of this stuff. Okay. Oh, okay, here we go. You guys can interrupt me whenever you need to, because I am going to read the actual wording of HB 1130 came out. So it says HB 1130 as introduced, 2024 session. So it's got a number of 24-2659. And this came out on 11/10, called House Bill 1130, an act establishing a commission to study the economic, legal, and sociological aspects of New Hampshire, exerting its sovereign state rights. That's the title. Right now, it has one sponsor, Representative Sanadastazo, Cheshire County, 18. And the committee it'll be discussed is in the state-federal relations and veteran affairs. Both of our big bills are both going to go to that state, that same one. Also, that one I was just talking to you guys about that proposes us not listening to the CDC, that's going to be heard in the same committee. Maybe we need to have so much stuff happening in that state-federal relations committee that it becomes a hubbub. That would be fun.
That would be really fun.
Let's see here. I'm looking through the legalese. In the year of our Lord, 2024, an act establishing a committee to study the economic, legal, and sociological aspects of New Hampshire, exerting its sovereign state rights, being enacted by the state and House of Representatives in general court convened. 1. New section, Commission for Sovereign State Rights. Amend RSA 1 by inserting after section 13 the following new section. Commission established, secession. There is established a commission to study the economic, legal, and sociological aspects of New Hampshire, exerting its sovereign state rights. Notwithstanding RSA 14:49, the members of the commission shall be as follows. So A, there's going to be 3 members of the House of Representatives. All right, 2 members of the Senate. 2 members of the a member of the public appointed by the governor. A member of the public appointed by the Speaker of the House. A member of the public appointed by the Senate President. There'd also be the Attorney General or designee from the Attorney General. 1 member representing the Business and Industry Association. 1 member of the New Hampshire Medical Society. 1 member representing the University System of New Hampshire. 1 representative from the Division of Travel and Tourism. The president of the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, whoever that is at the time. Who's the president of the Foundation of New Hampshire Independence right now? I don't know. We'd have to look it up. The legislative members of the commission shall receive mileage at the legislative rate. The commission shall study the same things that it's mentioned before. What are the fiscal implications? What currency would an independent New Hampshire use? How would interstate travel and commerce be managed? How would law enforcement and criminal justice function? What would New Hampshire's domestic energy policy be like? what healthcare system would be in place, how would New Hampshire defend itself against domestic and foreign threats. Ooh, domestic threats in the New Hampshire. All right, I love it.
Are we
What
talking
would
about the Democrats?
Yeah. Or as we
I
like
don't
to
think we have anything to worry about with the Democrats.
Yes, or after we leave, then we call them the insurrectionists. the Democratic Party.
We could pretend they staged a coup and it was the most terrifying event in our history.
Yes, we'll have to prepare for that. That's something we have to worry about. What would be the impact of federal entitlements such as Social Security and Medicare? Right, that comes up all the time. Under what circumstances would asserting sovereign rights be most viable? What would citizens' naturalization processes look like? Okay. What would be New Hampshire's new immigration policy? How would properties currently under federal or interstate jurisdiction be managed or negotiated? Oh, as a side, remember people were worried about, I think in Arkansas, they told some Chinese company that they couldn't own land there. What do you guys think we should do if we become a separate country and we find out that some Chinese company owns some farmland? What do you think we should do?
What is there to do? I mean, if they own the land, they own the land. It's their land.
Yeah,
you'd
it does make it tough. I mean,
think that
if they own the land, they might as well be able to use it.
Yeah, I mean, if they legally bought it, I don't know how you decide whether they're Chinese or,
I mean, anybody's, I'd like to think that the reason that most of us want freedom or want independence is because of freedom, and therefore people would not have a problem with immigration to New Hampshire. And if anybody can immigrate to New Hampshire and not have any restrictions on border control, because I want to be able to go and come and go as I please, right? I want that for other people as well. And if that's the case, then where would we go? I mean, like, what would justify a restriction on a Chinese person owning land in New Hampshire?
Yeah, I mean, if they bought it, in the first place, and we're sticking it to them in the taxes, we know that, right? The poor saps paying property taxes. Yeah. Okay. How would residents who oppose independence be treated? Tar and feather. Is that what's? Did you say that, Riley?
No, I don't think
No,
tar and feathering.
I think that's irresponsible of you to say.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I would never say something like that.
Here's a better question. So, once New Hampshire becomes independent, would you support independence from New Hampshire?
In which way?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
What would be the status of current foreign nationals and the U.S. permanent residents in New Hampshire? Okay, so they'll be discussing that. Which international bodies? Oh, and by the way, Matt C. of the New Hampshire Independence PAC, right, has been writing letters to academics who have written or taught about secession. And he's trying to get them to come and testify before the committee for like this bill and the secession bill. And he's already getting some responses back where the person's saying, well, I'm not going to choose sides, or I'm not partisan. And I think Matt C's responding, well, we don't even want that. We just want to discuss this, right? Let's talk about it. Have people come and discuss why it's a horrible idea so we can, hash it out. It's just like this committee. It sounds like this committee will be hashing out the details, right? They might even study the whole thing and say, it's too crazy, we shouldn't do it, right? We don't know what this committee is going to do. Which international bodies and nation states could be allies or partners following an affirmative independence vote? Okay. Then it's telling you the members of the study committee shall elect a chairperson and how many days this is going to take. And then it's going to file an interim and final report is what is supposed to happen in this one. And then they're supposed to give the final report to the Speaker of the House, the Senate, the House Clerk, the Senate Clerk, the Governor, and the State Library on or before November 1st, 2024. So this would happen like between maybe May and November if it passed, right? A few months of discussion.
Nice.
And then the effective date, yeah, okay, this is interesting. All right. So what do you guys think of that in general?
I want to know one other thing. Why is it that they assume that we have to cooperate, right? Like, there was a time in the United States in the founding where states didn't cooperate with one another. Why can't we? Why do we have to cooperate with one another, right? Like, I mean, I get that there are issues, like, for example, back, when the country was founded, well, at least after immediately following independence from Great Britain, states had their own currencies, for example, and I understand that creates some complication because then you have to exchange money when you go from one state to another. However, we have, there's nothing that stops people from coming up with solutions to these problems. And in large part, we have solutions to these problems already today. If I go to Europe, for example, and I swipe my credit card, I get charged in euros, but it takes it from a US dollar balance. So it's not even like it was back in the day. We have free market solutions to these problems.
Yeah, and if like in the New Hampshire, if we don't have a lot of rules about what currencies you can use, what money you can use, and all that kind of stuff, then it'll sort itself out, and there'll be we should be the place where the banking center where everybody swaps the money.
Why do we even need a currency at all?
Yeah. Not an official one, right?
Right. There's no need for a government to create a currency. We will have, we could use anything we want. We could use gold backs.
But when you think about
this is something the free market can decide and figure out.
Yeah, when you think about how in 1789, when they made the United States, they used a silver coin, that wasn't made by their country. The dollar wasn't theirs. So, I don't know why we couldn't start with something like that.
And it would actually solve a lot of problems. Like, look at places like Argentina, right, where their currency is inflated and to no end, right? Like way worse than the United States. And if there simply wasn't a currency and people could adopt whatever they wanted, there would be competition in the marketplace all of a sudden, and a currency that was, like maybe another government's currency, who would use that currency, right? Nobody would use that currency, or they would stop using it if it became, inflationary to such an extreme that it became worthless, right? But right now, when a government implements a currency, well, you don't have a choice. You have to accept it. Well, you don't if there is no official currency to begin with.
Yeah, definitely a factor. Well, that's all the stuff. The next part, the next thing I'm going to put into the next blog post. It's too long for me to go through. So I've run out of stuff. What do you guys have? Have we covered enough for this week?
I don't have anything if you guys don't. I mean, I think we've covered a lot this week. I think it's important that we keep on top of the news here going on in New Hampshire, keep discussing New Hampshire independence, because we're coming up to another voting cycle, another election cycle where people get to choose the so-called president. And I think
there is something else I'd love to spring up. I want to emphasize that for anybody who's listening, independence doesn't magically solve all of New Hampshire's problems.
No,
it's just one aspect that in order to move forward on some issues, we need to be independent. I was at a hearing today in regards to a parent who was charged with I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was something like not neglect. It wouldn't have been neglect. It would have been like, I guess, endangerment. I think it was endangerment, endangering her child for leaving her kid in the car for a couple of minutes. And it was a problem with like DCYF, and ultimately it was a political response. It was politically motivated, where basically they refused to allow DCYF onto their property, and then in the end, they refused to sign paperwork that would allow DCYF to come onto their property. And this is a New Hampshire. They get federal funding, but it's a New Hampshire organization that basically the idea is it's government and they're supposed to protect children, but in practice they don't actually do that. They actually like do the opposite of that, and they end up causing like they take kids away from parents who are good, and then they hand them to abusers and things like that. And but anyway, the point is that this family wasn't going to go along with that. And so the government, the state then stepped in and charged them with the crime of leaving the kid in the car for a couple of minutes. And the point that I'm making here is that we're going to now I will say that independence would likely help that situation because the DCYF is mostly funded apparently by the federal government. However, it is a state organization. And so, yes, to some degree, it would probably go away. But to the degree that it didn't go away, there's still a problem here that would need to be solved. And we can even solve that without independence, probably by simply dissolving the organization within New Hampshire, without even declaring independence. But certainly, I think independence would solve this and many other issues too. So I think it's unfair. And I don't think any of us have argued this, but I think anybody who would say, well, it's not going to solve all your problems. Well, it's not. No, I think I would at least agree. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but it will help solve many problems.
And I think there's certain things that only are solved by us leaving, like us not being in wars and things like that. Not being subject to federal income taxes, but all those other things are, lots of complications. So Jay has told me he wants me to interview him to discuss this, and especially discussing how the state of New Hampshire's, that department, how it gets the federal funds, and he thinks that really affects them. So I'm gonna make it an episode about that. So
yeah, I don't know enough about it myself, but Jay apparently knows more. So, but I mean, he's involved in that, so he would know more.
So he'll be, we'll get a lot more about that once I do my session with him. So that'll be good. All right. Well, I've run out of stuff. What about you guys?
I'm out of stuff too.
Okay. Well, if you guys think of anything we need to talk to, then post it wherever I find things like the Matrix server and stuff like that. And I will, when things get posted there, then I add all the interesting things to my blog post, and then boom, that'll be our next session. So,
okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Good talking to you guys.
Yeah.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Do you value your privacy? Want hardware that works? Get Linux at New Hampshire's very own penguin.com.